This may be the last video I ever make. It may ruin my career and everything I ever did, but it needs to happen, and I'll tell you why. Go to any restaurant, any school, anything, and everybody is addicted to these. If there's something that triggers someone, they're going to keep getting fed those videos and pictures by the algorithm, and it's going to make them extreme. And also, we're going to talk about firearms for the sake of basic safety, because I see no leadership in the United States and world anymore publicly relating to that. In the last 2 years, police officers have been roughed up in every way you can imagine. The good ones are leaving. And they're afraid to do their job. So put your video games down and go outside. Let's stop fighting. The world's a good place. You don't have to worry about political correction and everything else, or worrying about other people. All the social problems that we talk about in America can basically be fixed with, just don't be a dick. Well guys, for this video I actually had to make some notes because these points were too important to miss any. But legitimately this may be the last YouTube video I ever make, because the topics I'm bringing up are inherently incredibly risky, which will get into the dangers of social media, relating also to people and its relation to mental health all over the world. And also we're going to talk about firearms for the sake of basic safety, because I see no leadership in the United States and world anymore publicly relating to that. Yeah, I'm pretty darn sure I'm risking everything making this video, but you know what? I'm gonna take that risk. And I'm gonna tell you why at the end of the video with something important, I think. The most important question is, why is there a risk for me to talk about things that are important for the world and important for people and that will save lives? That's because social media and the nature of the algorithms are incredibly biased, and they're making everyone extreme. So that's going to be one of the points we have to bring up. But the United States of America is a good country. I think it's silly to rate one country on another, and that's a pointless argument. But from my experience, it's the one country that I want to stay living at, even have traveled to other places in the world, and the one place that gives a legitimate opportunity for people regardless of where they come from. And that's something I've been able to cultivate mentoring young students, many of them first-generation Americans, and numerous ones of them still being from another country and coming here. So it's a wonderful country and I do care about it, but more importantly, I care about other people and the future of the world. And I know this is a car channel. Obviously, there's a lot of cars around and I love that. But my experience on social media, what I'm seeing is, at this moment, I hope that you'll give me the opportunity to use this platform to speak about something that no one is showing the leadership to do so. So I'm taking that risk. And we'll get back to car stuff afterward. We have a mental health crisis all over the world, and especially the United States. And it's been brought to us from the information age. The internet's been an incredible thing. It's connected everyone all over the world. It's allowed people such as myself to find hobbies that we like more, to gather information, to grow smarter, to connect with people. And that was the great thing about it initially. Maybe the things that Nikola Tesla talked about and predicted many, many years ago. But the downside with that is that's going to be manipulated through human control and greed, as things like that have been manipulated all throughout history. When the corporations take over, it doesn't matter whether it's power or money or taking your information, that's a big problem. And in terms of mental health, let's be honest, we're all addicted to the internet through these. Our phones. Go to any restaurant, any school, anything, and everybody is addicted to these. Why? Why is that something we're not talking about? Heroin, cocaine, hard drugs, liquor, those are addictions. We talk about those, we have things for that. But do we have anything to help people with an addiction to the internet and social media? And because of the nature of that, everybody sees everything else. And suddenly our worlds become very small, in a strange niche way. And we see things elsewhere in the world that are dangerous, that are bad, that are positive, that are things we want. And suddenly, all of the most negative human emotions come out. Anger, fear, greed, lust, addiction, jealousy. Those are the things that are manipulated and stoked by social media. And it's having a tangible effect on people. And an effect that I have seen behind the scenes with social media that I'll get to here shortly. But there's so many good things that have happened with social media, but the problem is right now we're in the danger side. It's a hot mess everywhere. And people are becoming extreme. I'll give you an example. On my channel, the one thing I said I would do when I started this channel is I would be truthful. And I've spoken about concepts that relate to social class, economics, the world, social media, as it relates to cars largely. But those are the things that bring out people who think. But sometimes what it does is, by nature of the algorithm, videos, certain kinds of videos, will continuously be fed to individuals because they watch them or provokes a response. So if there's somebody out there that something frightens them, the internet knows that, and it's going to keep feeding them those pictures and videos, and they're going to become terrified that the world is a certain way. If there's something that makes someone angry, if there's something that triggers someone, they're going to keep getting fed those videos and pictures by the algorithm, and it's going to make them extreme. And some of those extreme people have interacted with me behind the scenes. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but a story enough that made me show my police officer friend, how do I deal with this one? And the first thing he said is, after his mouth dropped to the floor and his eyes got really big, he said, "Does anybody know where you live? That person is dangerously schizophrenic." And it hasn't just been one. I see firsthand how videos and the algorithm all throughout social media are influencing people that already are on the edge, if not having serious mental health disorders. And that's what scares me, because those are the people who act negatively upon it. So it's something we desperately need to talk about. But as another nature, if you look at the absurd nature of politics in the United States, it's a stupid football rivalry match. Two sides. Give me a break. I think the other reason because of that is, because of the information age, everything must be extreme. Sensationalist clickbait titles. That's the only way to do it. The same has bled into politics. Extremism, one side or the other, a football match that you can't come back from, and no real leadership. Leadership must have accountability. Leadership must having somebody put their name on the line. Frankly, the way I'm putting my name and career on the line to do this video today. So, I bring that up because we are going to talk about firearms in the United States. Now, this video is not political on one side or the other. This is common sense and the nature of reality. The United States has more firearms than people. We're kind of like Amsterdam with bicycles, but with guns. It's just the way it is. Basically, the rule number one about the United States is you get to say whatever you want. It's called free speech. But that's frighteningly under attack. There's censorship on the internet. Rule number two, you have the right to have guns. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that around the world, and perhaps your country doesn't have that. But I will say this, human nature has not changed in thousands of years. And anyone who studies history or reads it understands the value and why founding fathers put that in. So whether you like it or not, it is in fact what this country is founded on. And it was funny because, and respectfully, I heard someone English going off about hating an abhorrent gun culture, to which I replied, oh, the English monastery, hating American guns since 1776. I think that's why they put that in. But strangely enough, loving it through the entirety of the first half of the 20th century. I guess they didn't really want to learn how to speak German after all, or take on views from the East at that time. So the United States does have guns. Kind of like the Mandalorian says, weapons are my religion. Our country is built on the ability to say what you want, have freedom of religion, be equal people, and to not take crap and get pushed around. That's why the guns exist. And it's worked pretty good for a long time. But social media is doing something extreme to our people, and it manifests in ugly ways that way. Now, before I get into basic firearm safety, and I do this only because I think it's important for people to understand that, I don't see it. I want to talk about a few things that are more dangerous than firearms. I'll give you an example. How about this? Fire. Just with this, you be creative. There's a whole lot of ways to do far worse things than you can do with one gun. I don't care what gun that is. Something else that's very dangerous everyone takes for granted? Working underneath your car. You got a bad jack stand, could end your day real quick, and life. Something else? Motor vehicles. We take it for granted that all over the world, 3,000 plus pound objects traveling at 60 miles an hour plus drive straight at each other like this and pass by inches. And one false move and people die. We take for granted that there's many places all over the world in a civilized country that people walk on sidewalks, gather in crowds, and everybody has cars. That's obviously a risk to take things out. So why are we attacking firearms? Well, they have been vilified over the years. And Hollywood, I can't stand as just a normal person. They're horrible, raging hypocrites with no morality. Hollywood vilifies and makes everybody afraid of guns for the sake of, making money. Yet turns around and say how horrible they are. Well, you all are making them worse in this country by being terrible leaders, having basically no morality. So you may be rich, but you're bankrupt, morally. So what I did, I have a few firearms that I've arranged to have here today. Now, many of you will notice it's dead quiet. There is no one here. This is a car shop. This is where we build things. There are no firearms kept here, nor do they ever come here. But because this back section is where I do my videos, I thought it was important today to arrange it so I could have a few in here to show you. So I'm going to remove a few. Now, the very first rule about all firearms, or at least I think the most common sense one, is every weapon must be treated as though it was loaded and cocked at all times, period. So you'll notice I am not putting my hand anywhere near the trigger. And I'm setting this down in a manner that is not pointing at me or at anything else property that can't be damaged. To my left are toolboxes and many heavy metal things. And if a firearm were to discharge, which I plan for it not to, it wouldn't be traveling through a wall and God knows where. So we're going to talk about that aspect of safety there. But this is a sporting shotgun. It's an over and under. People even shoot those in England where they have different laws. As another note, I do want to point out for anybody that's not from the United States, the United States actually has many gun laws dictating virtually everything about firearm ownership, protection, and usage. And I've learned, actually, from mentoring young people from all over the world of different backgrounds and colors, that overseas, the world doesn't seem to think there's any laws in the United States on firearms. Interesting. Well, there are, and we're all far more responsible than you may realize, which I think if you come to understand that there are more firearms in the United States than people, and put it into perspective, it's not too bad. So, I have 3 rifles here of different actions. I've also brought 2 handguns or pistols. Each one represents a different type of function, and I think it's important to bring them out today for the sake of learning and recognition, and that's all. All right. Before we get into this, I do want to bring something else up. There are 2 pieces of ammunition here. I'm going to leave these in the clip, and I'm going to walk up closer to show you. These are .30-06 in hunting rifles, and also the M1 Garand from World War II. This is a very powerful round. That, if you can see it, is a .22 short. While this one may look like a toy by comparison to this, they both have the ability to be lethal. So we need to treat them with respect and education, period. Now, I did grow up in a family with a big military background. My grandfather was a huge influence in a positive way, both as a community person, having responsibility, and he was a proud World War II Army infantry veteran of the Battle of Okinawa. So he also taught me firearm safety and how to shoot. There are many other military in my family, so I respect that job, and nowadays I have numerous military friends throughout different branches and different jobs, as well as police officers. So I hope I will do them the best service by giving good information here. My parents, while not in the military, nor having any law enforcement background, my father did enjoy historic firearms relating to black powder guns as they would have been in the 17 and 1800s as a hobby, and did not shoot much. When I was raised as a child, there was a massive amount of respect, and I was not allowed anywhere remotely near or to even know where they were at any given time. And that was very important because everyone treated them with respect. So that's very important. Okay, so we have numerous firearms here. Rule number 1, all firearms should be treated as if they are loaded and cocked at all times, whether they are or are not. Whether you can confirm or just did that they are unloaded, or are configured at the time in a way that they cannot be fired, you still must treat them as though they were loaded. And here's what I'm going to give you an example of. The first one is, where is it pointing? So with a rifle, it's a little simpler because it's long and you have to be a little bit more keen with it. This is an M1 Garand from World War II, a very classic rifle of history. I'm pointing it to the left. There are no people over there. I'm going to pretend that you, which is now a camera, are also a person. I will not take the rifle and muzzle sweep at you like this, like an idiot. That's your first way to know someone is an idiot. So even if you see somebody on the news in a courtroom that wants to make a point, that picks up a rifle and starts pointing it out there like that, that person is an idiot and knows nothing of firearm safety, or potentially is considering to do someone harm, which is bad. So the first one is don't point it at anybody. On that other note, even a small firearm, such as this pistol, 380 ACP, it's a much smaller round, has the ability to go through walls, ceilings, floors, etc. So if you're handling a firearm or considering handling a firearm, you need to give consideration to what is beyond where you're at. Generally speaking, the two safest places to point something when you're holding them is either at the ground or in the air. And if you change from the position of in the air to in the ground, you are sweeping. So there better not be any people, pets, or anything that can't possibly have done damage to in that direction. If you're on an upper floor and there's a basement with people in it, then don't point it at the ground because you're potentially pointing it at people. If you're on a bottom floor and there's a second floor, don't point it up because you're potentially pointing it at people. If you're in a home and there's another home, let's say right there, then don't point it over there. In this circumstance, there isn't, because they have the ability to go through a wall. And if you make a mistake, not only can you end your life by going to jail, losing your career, being blackballed to your general life, but you could end someone else's life. So it's important to be responsible. So that's the first one. Don't muzzle sweep people. If you're holding a handgun, don't walk around like this. This is not a video game. You cannot go like this, just looking at it. At all times, you must be aware of that. And if you're at a range, the guns point down range at all times. I'm also going to get to some other details, so I hope you'll keep listening. The other most important rule, rule number 2, keep your finger off the damn trigger. You can see it if you're in a sporting goods stores and people are looking at firearms, or if you're, let's say, with a military friend or police officer and you have the opportunity to handle a firearm. The best way you can put everyone at ease that says you have some modicum of sense and respect is to keep your finger off the trigger. So for instance, if I was going to handle a weapon, even if it's a shotgun such as this, you notice how I picked it up. I didn't pull this finger out. And if you want to hold it in a sporting way as though to sight it somewhere like this, hold your finger out. Because that is a very clear-cut way of showing anybody around that you are not an idiot. And you know how to handle this, and you will put them more at ease. But respectfully, everybody that are around firearms should always be aware and have situational awareness of other people, the firearms, and the situations that they're in. But if you at least go by those 2 very basic rules of always treating every firearm as if it is loaded with the safety off, one in the chamber and cocked in every circumstance, then point it in a manner that can't do any harm if it were to go off. And 2, keep your finger off the trigger. Now, finishing this up, relating to it, I may do another video one day at a range or transporting firearms with regard to a car, because this is obviously a car channel. And I have noticed that most people who are interested in cars and classic cars and racing are also interested in watches, airplanes, trains, firearms, machines, scientific instruments, etc. So I think it relates, and I think it's important. But I do want to bring something else up that's very important. So all of these weapons here I'm treating as though they are loaded. Now, how do you know from a visual glance if it is not loaded or can at least not fire? Well, in the circumstance of an M1 Garand, which is actually what this ammunition here is too, and I will not be loading it today. If the action is back and open, it cannot fire. Even if you shove the round in there, it cannot fire in this configuration. The safety of an M1 Garand is here, that if your finger wasn't the trigger, you push forward for safety off. This M1 is as such that if there are no rounds in it or the action is open, the safety is off, but you can't actually put it on because the gun is designed in such a way because it cannot be fired. So the best way to put somebody's mind at ease if you're either handling it or at a range is to have the action open, because it's very clear and easy to see that this gun cannot fire in that circumstance. It's also very simple to look inside there and see that there are no rounds. As another note, I'm going to bring something up. The M1 Garand does not have a magazine, it has a clip, which is this black steel piece here that holds 8 rounds together. And that's how it's loaded from the top. That is a clip. This is a magazine from a pistol. And magazines can be used in rifles and pistols, etc., and they can be of various capacities. So if you hear somebody talking about modern firearms and they say a clip, well, they're either a real old timer or maybe they don't know what they're talking about. So that's just a tip. This is a bolt action rifle. It's a 22. It loads through this tube. A bolt action rifle, the fast and easiest way to know that it cannot fire is that the bolt is open. Same type thing. You can see in here, there are no rounds. It cannot fire with the bolt open, whether the safety is on or is not. So if you're handling a firearm or you're at a range, you can leave the bolt open to let everyone know that it is safe. In the circumstance of an over and under shotgun, this being 12 gauge, this is for sporting or for hunting birds. I've never been much for hunting because, quite frankly, I really like animals. But a guy's got to eat. But I'm not into hunting just for the sake of hunting, but I do like sport, which is marksmanship or clay birds. This is how it opens, and that would eject both of the shotgun rounds. You leave your shotgun like this. If you're hiking or carrying, this is a very clear-cut way to know the gun is safe. This gun in this configuration is now just a heavy stick. So this is a way you can leave it to know that it is unloaded. Now with pistols, a few are here. This one's kind of for funsies, although it's not really funsies, it's a historical weapon. It's from the mid-1800s. This is a Sharps pepper box. It has 4 barrels that can be loaded with 22 short. And it's kind of persnickety, pardon me here, I have to put it to there. The action is now open, it cannot fire. This pistol is a Walther PPK, most well known for all of the James Bond movies. These are their magazines here. You'll notice I'm still not holding it anywhere near the trigger. Now this particular firearm has a hammer drop and a safety here. So this is a semi-automatic pistol. The fastest way to know you're pointing away, you keep it away from the trigger, is to rack the gun here. You can look inside and check it for any rounds to see if there's a magazine and release. If you do this a couple of times with no magazine in it, you have cleared it and cleared the rounds. Also, that noise will put any police officer or anybody not at ease anymore. And if you're at a firing range, maybe don't make that noise behind somebody's back. Just basic etiquette. But in this circumstance, if it were cocked here, which I have already cleared it, and I am pointing upward where there's nothing to be damaged, I have my finger off the trigger, and there's also no magazine in it. This is the hammer drop. The gun knew it had nothing in it. So if it's off of safe, and I bring the hammer back and it stays there, this is an unsafe position. The 2 things you can do is 1, keep pointing it that way. You can rack the gun here and cycle it, and there's nothing in it. But this particular weapon has this button here. It's called a hammer drop, which safely puts something in the way so the hammer cannot fire around on the firing pin. It's very nice, but I still don't trust that. So you have to keep things like that in mind. I will also implore everyone with firearms and firearm safety, if you have any interest in learning about them, which I think it's all of our important to have some sort of knowledge about this so we can make educated decisions or recognize situations that maybe need to be made safer, that it's important that we have some kind of knowledge of firearms in the United States. And places to look, sportsman clubs. You can go to sporting goods stores. I hear Walmart is the largest arms dealer in the country, which is interesting. But go to sporting goods stores and see if there's places where you can take classes on safety and firearm safety. And potentially also your local police or sheriff office may be able to turn you on in the right direction. And then lastly, a revolver. Now this is a double action revolver, which the fastest way to know that this one cannot fire, see if I can do this while being dumb, is to open this and have all the chambers out. By looking at it from behind, you can easily see there's nothing in it. And if you leave it like this, it cannot fire. Also, you'll notice here, I do not have an AR-15 or what is commonly referred to as an assault rifle. I have absolutely nothing against a semi-automatic rifle, but I also find no interest in them. Truthfully, semi-automatic rifles is exactly what all assault rifles are in America, have existed in this country since the late 1800s. They were in civilian hands before they were in military hands, and it's been like that way for a century plus. But assault rifles now are being vilified because they look kind of disco. Sort of like, you know, guys that drive slow Hondas put like aftermarket wings and big wheels on it and call them a race car. Yeah, that ain't no race car. That's a Honda with a bunch of crap on it. An assault rifle is just a semi-automatic rifle with a bunch of crap on it that might look scary. It's probably been beat into your head by Hollywood, who doesn't care about you or any morals. I will make mention the M1 Garand. This is from World War II and is an iconic American firearm. It only holds 8, so you cannot put a high-capacity magazine in it. But this is a semi-automatic rifle. It's also more high-powered than most assault rifles. But generally, this doesn't get people emotionally triggered because it's a historic firearm. I just wanted to bring that up because if you find people trying to vilify something because it looks scary, maybe just do a little basic research and see what it actually is. So that's what I wanted to say relating to firearm safety today. I think it's important. Another detail I do want to bring up is another YouTuber I am going to pick on. Whistling Diesel is huge. He is basically making his money off of somewhat being a professional troll. But I believe he had a Barrett 50 caliber rifle, incredibly high powered, where he was irresponsibly shooting at things at a range that he should not, and he took shrapnel to the face. He did so and became more famous because of it, but the reason that happened is because he's a buffoon and doesn't care about safety and is a bad role model, period. But unfortunately, by nature of algorithms today, those negative traits that feed upon all the negative emotions of people are what gets views. And I told earlier that we have a mental health crisis and a massive addiction to social media. All of it. Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, even YouTube. We're all addicted. And the reason we're addicted is because the algorithms are playing upon the worst aspects of human emotion and humanity. And we, as people, are not strong enough to understand how to we are not experienced enough and mature enough to get beyond this. And we're in a horrible teething process of human history. So the reason Whistling Diesel can be such an incredible, dangerous, hypocritical buffoon and do that is because it's playing at certain emotions of people. The algorithm knows that. And those sorts of things are fed to everyone to keep you addicted. Because if they keep you addicted and keep you watching, they can sell ads and they can make money. But the dangerous thing about that is who is behind all this social media. They're privately owned, so they can do what they want. They can ban whomever they want, which means with the amount of power that they have and have the whole world addicted in all your information, and they can choose who to turn the light switch on for and who to turn it off for, they have the ability to effectively usurp what was free speech, which was the rule number one and the most important thing in the United States of America, which has been a pretty darn good place since it's existed. That needs to be looked at. And honestly, it's my opinion as a social media person, public figure, and influencer, that all of the algorithms need to be public. Because only then, if people know what they are, that we can keep tracks of if they're being fair and if they're actually something good for humanity in the future, or if there's something that only exists for the power of certain few. That's not a good thing, the second one, regardless of where you are. Now, also my video, obviously there are firearms here, and that typically might go one way, but I'm speaking in generalization for all of people with the United States and world. I'm not taking a political stance, because politics is pretty stupid nowadays. It's just as extreme as of what all social media has done to us. No politicians are taking accountability for anything. They can barely even speak now. But this is not for us to get angry about and take action. It's only for us to share and understand and learn from and grow. Because if we as people can be smart, find the values that matter, champion the better qualities of humanity to move forward, When we find our goals and our common goals, then we will actually be able to meet them. Because only now, while we are addicted and manipulated by algorithms into more extreme versions of ourselves, we're all weak. And when everyone is weak, they can be controlled. And you know what? Call me old-fashioned American, but I don't like that. I don't think it's good. Something else I'll mention. I said at the beginning of the video, I'm going to tell you why I did this and why I don't mind risking it all. But before I do that, I do want to make another note. In the last 2 years, police officers have been roughed up in every way you can imagine. The good ones are leaving. And they're afraid to do their job because they don't know if anybody will have their back. We've seen it recently. Police officers standing down and not engaging when they need to, when civilians and parents have to break line and go do it. The things we do have horrible ramifications. And the politicians that are out there now look at a problem and they're like, oh, let's just pour gasoline on it and set it on fire. That'll make it go away, right? No, you took a problem and you set it on fire because there's no good leadership. So, this may be the last video I ever make. It may ruin my career and everything I ever did, but it needs to happen, and I'll tell you why. My grandfather passed away a few years, and he was a positive influence in my life. He was from the World War II generation, of course, and he fought in the Battle of Okinawa with the Army. It was a horrible, horrible thing. He did come out of there with a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. The Bronze Star because he kept going back and saving people, because he thought it was his turn. And he did it without having to shoot anyone. And he got shot, but he got out. And when he got out, he remembered that. He learned the lessons, but he moved on to make the world better. Genius Garage, the nonprofit that I've been fighting for years to help young people launch their careers in engineering and whatnot, could not have existed right now if he didn't believe in it and loan money. And he cared because I was paying it forward. He taught me to respect community, people, animals, firearms, and everything that a nation is. But to understand people and to not judge them by their skin color or what they believe. Well, he passed away, so he's not around to help make the future better and stand up in adversity for it. So today I'm doing that. Because sometimes morals in the future and other people and standing up for your nation is a hell of a lot more important than a career. And I would rather be poor and live in a nation that is free and good for all, so everybody has a fair shot to go somewhere, than to live well and not be free. All right, guys, that's it. I hope you will share this video. I think it's very important. And I would also implore young people, put your video games down and go outside. Do anything else. The one thing I learned many years ago, see, I grew up in the 80s, I was a kid, since Atari and Nintendo 8-bit came out. I've seen it from the beginning. And it didn't take me that long by the time I was a teenager to realize I gotta stop. Because at the end of the day, when I'm done playing video games, I have nothing to show for it. Nothing. Except my day being gone. And yes, violent video games, immoral video games are having a profound psychological effect on our culture and all of you. The world's a much better place if you go out there and fight for it and look at it. So put your video games down and go outside. Let's stop fighting. The world's a good place. You don't have to worry about political correction and everything else, or worrying about other people. All the social problems that we talk about in America can basically be fixed with, just don't be a dick. Anyway, maybe that'll be the last thing I say on YouTube. But if it is, it was worth it. See you guys.